respected speakers, judges, and opposition. I'm here today with Majid's opposition, covering why we strongly believe that healthcare ought not to be recognized as a human right. Now, I'd first like to go into the definitions for these terms, move on to my refutations of my opponent's points before we really into the opposition's case. So, the first thing we'd like to go is into our definitions. Now, a few major terms and key terms we believe were skimmed over by the opposition. First of all, the definition of healthcare. What exactly is offered under healthcare? Now, they may lead you to believe that these are these vital services and practices, but in much realer sense, these are anything a government can offer, and anything government can help its citizens, such as how Canada and other nations such as Iran, surprisingly, offer gender reassignment surgeries under national healthcare. How nations such as Finland offer the right to euthanasia under their healthcare. Now, places such as Colorado offer the right to medicinal marijuana under their healthcare. We believe that these are important to the nature of the debate. Secondly, we wish to define the term access. We believe that access here is government funded that all people can afford in a realistic place. But most importantly is the nature of human rights. Now, we heard a lot of talk about the United States stuff. We tell you that we're in a world of over 100 different countries, many of whom are struggling to have their citizens that can afford to eat. Many of whom have citizens that are struggling to put roofs over their heads and clean water in their house. And we tell you that it is important to look at these people as the nations of our case, as these are the nations which may not be able to afford it, and these are the nations which have the biggest issue with these things. So, I'd now like to move into our rows. First and foremost, we talk about the lower cost of healthcare. That if we do this on average, because of the nature of healthcare, it gets lower and everyone's paying less. And while that's true in a first world society, where the government can make that initial investment, can ensure that it can invest into healthcare and know that its economy is strong enough, that its taxpayers are making enough, its quality of life is high enough, that those will come back eventually. The rates will go down as people will afford to use the system in the US. We believe that in places that are too poor to make that initial investment. Places like Zimbabwe, places like Kenya, which are unable to have a decent government, that can adequately uphold this system of state-sponsored healthcare and offer the right to healthcare to everyone, it is simply not possible. And if we recognize it as a right now, it forces them to take their prize away from what really matters and what really can help their people, and to funding different sorts of medicinal procedures that are not vital to success of this nation.
You present that a lot of countries don't have an opportunity to have access to healthcare because of their need to grow whatever they can't afford it. But how does a country like Greece, who's suffering a lot of economic failure, still has to afford it?
Greece is different. And I'll tell you why Greece is different. Greece is a nation that is currently in economic, but it passes toward economic success. And as a result, they currently have large-scale institutions and large-scale infrastructure that allows them to continue providing what they once provided. Whereas other nations never had the opportunity to build that infrastructure in the first place, and therefore it doesn't exist. Well, when Greece's economic failed, their hospitals didn't just vanish. They were still there, albeit understaffed, albeit a little less medicine. But places in the third world simply do not have those luxuries. Move on to the second point, that this could stem the growth of the economy. This will help everyone in economics. As we talked about this earlier, this will help first world economies in first place implement this, but humans are not all living in first world countries, and it simply will not have a benefit to third world nations, and it takes away from what they need to be practicing on. Fourthly, they talk about an obligation upon such a nation to protect its citizens, that they have the obligation to represent what its citizens do and how they feel. We tell you that the most important thing a nation can do is represent the will of its people. We tell you that the most important system of government is adoption, and clear and transparent. And so when we see that in 2013, an academic survey found that 54% of Americans oppose a state-sponsored universal healthcare system, this is something that we cannot recognize as a true right, because it's something that goes against the sovereignty of the state. It will present a state's mandate to protect its citizens' interests and its citizens' beliefs, its citizens' way of life. Furthermore, they talk about the moral argument of how this could save lives, but we tell you that's not true in a third world sense, simply because while it may add to healthcare procedures that are necessary, such as non-life-saving operations, so they've talked about gender reassignment surgery, euthanasia, it will take away money from the true important issues such as curing poverty, which will lead to a net loss of life.
Point of information?
No. So now moving on to our constructive case. Our first constructive argument, as we talked about, is that this isn't rational everywhere. To back this up, we find that the United States of America, on average, per capita, spends $5,615 on healthcare, whereas Canada spends $5,980. That's almost a $400 difference. We tell you that this may not be a huge deal in first world nations. But $400 to someone starving to put food on the table is a very large thing. We tell you that this is an obligation, and to institute these situations takes away from the nation's obligation to the well-being of its people. It's something not something that can be practically implemented. And while we may want to talk about what may be possible and what theoretically we should do, the actuality is that we live in a world of hard and real facts. We need to look at the practicality of nature before we go and claim something as a human right and lead ourselves to failure. Secondly, we argue that this leads to the rationalization of healthcare and the decrease of quality of healthcare. We open you up to the example of the NHS, UK's healthcare service provider. Very recently, in fact, in the past decade, they have been sold to private corporations to help fund the UK's economy. Now, this was something that was done in the UK in good faith. However, we found that now that over 70% of the NHS is owned by private corporations, the citizen satisfaction rate has gone down dramatically. This is due in part to private corporations that own these things going towards funding with lower costs. Now, what does this have to say about our resolution? We tell you that when you move towards state-funded things like this, it's never going to be possible in the entire world to have state-funded. As a result, you would force yourself to use corporations to uphold the resolution, which would lead to a lower quality of accessibility, a lower quality of healthcare for everyone in the world. And finally, and most importantly, we talk about the will of the people. We tell you that while anything can be used doing right, the most important thing for a nation to do is to represent its constituent fairly and accurately. If its constituents fairly and representantly do not wish to have something done to them, then they should not be obligated to ask for a nation's sovereignty. An example of this would be a nation that opposes things like medicinal marijuana or gender reassignment on cultural or religious beliefs or their voter-based beliefs, or the USA, which even, as I say, 54% of its constituents do not wish for this. So to summarize our points then, we believe strongly the resolution should not be upheld for three major reasons. First of all, we believe this is not applicable to the entire world and all of humanity. That the third world will greatly suffer if we implement these things. It will lead to a net loss in life quality and life for these people, and it's not something we can do on a moral standpoint. Secondly, we believe this may lead to a lowering of the quality of healthcare provided to people, as this will lead to corporations being forced to take in when a government can't, and that leads to profit-driven views, which do not help the constituent on average. And thirdly, we tell you that the will of the people is the most important thing for any nation's government, etc., to take into account. We thank you for your time.
All right, 2 minutes, let's get to the judges.